Go. We'll be back in a moment with, that's right, Dr. Doom, Major Ed Dames. We're going to come back in a moment as we talk about North Korea, the kill shot, Comet Ison with Major Ed Dames. They call him Dr. Doom. Find out why. And, of course, foremost remote viewer and a teacher, Major Ed Dames, U.S. Army retired, decorated military intelligence officer, one of the original members of the U.S. Army prototype remote viewing training program as well. He served as the training and operations officer for the Defense Intelligence Agency's Psychic Intelligence Collection Unit, currently serving as the executive director for the Matrix Intelligence Agency, which is a private consulting group. His website, learnrb.com. Major Ed Dames, Dr. Doom, back on Coast to Coast. Ed, how are you?
I'm pretty good. And yourself, George? Good.
I'm doing well. It's good to have you here during some incredibly tense times, Ed. I mean, it seems...
Before we get into that doom and gloom stuff, I just wanted to say that was a great presentation by Dr. Greer. I was one of his first insiders in 1992, just prior to his formation of the Disclosure Project. So we sat down together in private in Atlanta, and I dumped all my UFO stuff on him.
Super. Yeah, he is good. He's very meticulous. He reminds me of you when it comes down to facts and data and everything else.
Actually, he does remind me of me.
He really does. So
what we'll do, I'll assign a team, a specialized professional team, and we'll take a look at that object. You notice that I call it an
Okay,
object.
Let's do that, and let's compare it to what they study. What's new with you?
Just a lot of stuff, George. A lot of.
I don't know why I always ask you that, because you never tell me.
Well, I mean, I have some private projects in addition to the Matrix Intelligence Agency work. I have some hobbies and projects. My hobbies have always been the same: missing children and child murderers and those kind of things. So I'm in the field a lot on that, on my hobbies.
Well, you help a lot of people doing that. That's for sure, and that's so important. Ed, I want to talk with you about a number of different things. Let's talk about, if we can, first and foremost, North Korea. You've talked about North Korea on this program before. They continue to rattle their saber sword. They are a little quiet this week, but who knows what will happen next week. What do you see there?
We see details that, to elaborate upon what we saw 16 years ago and announced on Coast to Coast 16 years ago or more, that the next use of an atomic weapon in anger will be on the Korean Peninsula by the North Koreans, and that we stated that, and we've been stating that, as you know, over the years. Well, we've got a lot more details now, and some I don't even think the Department of Defense has yet, although I'll fix that for them. As you know, they have said they abrogated their participation in the armistice, so they're back in the state of war. And they're being pushed pretty hard by new, because of their last ICBM. Their last space shot. They put a satellite. They successfully put a satellite in orbit, although it's not oriented the right way. But they'll get it right next time. Those developments. Those attempts to develop an intercontinental ballistic missile are not going to stop. They are not going to stop. They will keep doing it in spite of what anybody does, in spite of any more constraints that the UN Security Council puts on them. But keep in mind that their Nodong missile, which is tried and tested, their medium-range missile, which has a range of 800 miles, that can be fitted with a nuclear warhead, albeit a small one, the 7 megatons, but that puts it within range of a whole bunch of stuff owned by the U.S., Japan, and the South Koreans. However, what the U.S. government doesn't know, or my agency uncovered, is the following: their real plan. They know that it's going to take years to develop a successful ICBM, and a long time. And they may not have years before NATO or the UN attempts to impose democracy upon North Korea.
Good point.
And so they have a plan, and the plan is very, very devious, but very excellent. It's diabolical, but excellent. They've developed nuclear mines. Actually, we thought they were mines, but they are not mines. They're actual devices that will be transported via submarine to far distant places like Pearl Harbor, possibly Long Beach, places like that, and they'll be set off in those places. And that's how they'll get there and that's what the plans are right now. And those devices are already have been developed. They're ready.
Are they nukes? Nukes or dirty bombs?
You bet. No, they're nukes. They're nukes. And we thought they were mines, but we were wrong. They're actually nukes to be placed right off the coast, right outside the harbors or as close as they can get to U.S. territories if we attack North Korea. And my government does not know that yet. I have to fill in the details.
Well, is this guy Kim Jong-un, is he dumb enough to launch?
He's not in charge. He's just a patsy.
He's a puppet, isn't he?
He's just a patsy. Yeah. We're not really sure. Of course, my agency can find out, but our priorities are higher. But there's a good evidence that his aunt, who's a 4-star general, is running the country, and he's just being groomed for as a future patsy.
I think so too. So too.
Yeah.
Now, do you see that as a tinderbox, though, Ed? Is something going to happen?
I think yes. I don't think there's going to be a real long duration war on the Korean Peninsula because of the Chinese involvement there. The Chinese are antsy. In fact, they've got troops lined up along the shared mutual border because they don't want a war. All the refugees that would flood their country is something that they cannot deal with right now. Their economy is on the ropes as well as everybody else's. So the Chinese are not going to permit a full-blown war on that peninsula. But I think there will be some incidents there. However, there's going to be incidents all over Asia, all over the Pacific, the Chinese and Japanese and Taiwanese and the mainlanders. Right now, the whole world's a powder keg.
And the reason the Chinese have lined up their troops to keep the North Koreans from scattering into China?
No, correct. Because if there is a war, there'd be so many refugees.
Yeah.
And China is economically pressed right now, so that's not something they want. And they are providing assistance still. Even though they just sat down for talks. North Korea said they're not going to sit down with six-party talks anymore because they feel humiliated, especially since the U.S. is sitting at the table there dictating terms. They're not going to do that. They're way too proud.
Are you concerned about North Korea?
No, I'm concerned about something far bigger that will eclipse that, and it's the proverbial kill shot. I think 2013 is the year it's a hot time in the old town tonight. The reason I'm saying that is over the years, 15 years ago when I predicted this global economic collapse, one thing that we saw, we were wondering when this would happen, and all the research that went into trying to determine when this global economic collapse would occur, concomitant with the collapse, I'm not saying before or after, on the cusp of, is a global pandemic. And now we're looking at the H7N9 virus.
Virus where they've got like 120 cases, but 22 deaths already.
That's the one. That's the one that we're looking at right now. In fact, we're studying it, and we're saying that this really fits. That this really fits as a candidate for what we're seeing, and this large passing space body. If all the people who have not seen my Kill Shot DVDs, and it's free, they can go to thekillshot.com and get it still. In that, you'll see I mention a large passing space body is either initiates these solar flares, these sequence of very large solar flares, or is concomitant with it, attendant with it. We think that the Ison group that discovered this very large comet, we think that Ison comet is the best candidate. All these things are fitting like pieces of a puzzle. So that's why I'm saying I'm putting my stuff on the line now, because you know that remote viewing is outside of time. That's why we have to work so hard to establish dates. But I'm saying 2013 and early 2014 is when it starts. So all that, I believe, will eclipse all these wars and rumors of war.
Well, this comet that is out there, Comet Ison, right? That could be a candidate here?
Well, that group, actually, it's a group that discovered it, and it was two men in the group, one from Belarus, one a Russian. And we're saying that the comet that they discovered is very large. It's going to pass. It's a sun grazer. It's going to be a sun grazer, and it's going to dump dust on Earth, coming and going in 2014, early 2014. People can check this out on the internet themselves. We're saying that plus these two other events that presage. They're not precursors of, but they presage the kill shot. It's all so close together and because that large passing space body is the thing that triggers or is concurrent with the initiation of all these huge solar flares, we're saying that comet passes by in the late in winter, late fall and winter this year. That's when it starts. That's when we're saying all the stuff really starts. Now, we may have some very large solar flares before that, but we're saying when that comet passes through this neck of the woods, that's when the stuff really hits the fan.
Well, that's a good point, too. And when it does hit, it's going to hit in a very, very big way. Now, explain what you mean by the kill shot, because to me, that sounds like everybody's wiped out.
Yeah, it was probably long ago. It was probably a bad choice of words, but I used it. I used it because on Coast to Coast, I said, "Here comes the shot across the bow of the largest solar," and 2 weeks later, the largest solar flare in history popped up in 2003. And then I told Art Bell that that's not the kill shot, and that term stuck. The kill shot, and all this is explained on the DVD. Folks can see this. When this large passing space body comes by, the sun begins to produce massive solar flares, not just one. And it does not take out all life on Earth. It begins to turn Earth into a radiation rotisserie, upper atmosphere, not only just the upper atmosphere, but and I've talked about this on your show many, many times. So that what happens is, and right now I'm putting together we're doing a lot of work on death zones, I call them, in-house. But the impact areas for when this starts in 2013, 2014, where are all these deaths going to occur and by what means? Most of the deaths will be of starvation because water is going to dry up. The heat will go up intensely in many parts of the world, not all over at once. So over the years, I've done a lot of private contract work for sanctuary areas, where the best survival areas will be for people. I go into I use remote viewing for that personally. And by the antithesis of that, we're looking at where folks aren't going. For instance, I was wondering for many years why parts of British Columbia that fit as far as we're concerned, looking at hundreds and hundreds of these personal sanctuary locations, why there weren't a lot of sanctuary locations in British Columbia. Because, not near the coast, inland, because it's perfect. It's got a lot of fish, a lot of fresh water, not large population densities, educated population, blah, blah, blah. Well, it turns out that these sanctuary locations are not just sanctuaries from kill shot effects, personal sanctuary locations, but also from Fukushima, from the radiation from Fukushima, because that plume is coming down on British Columbia. Repeated, non-stop. This is not like Chernobyl where you cap it. No, this is a constant plume of radiation. And just like the radiation from Chernobyl, I used to live right next to Chernobyl for many years. That plume came down. Belarus took it hard. Belarus took it tough. But Sweden, children had thousands of cases of thyroid cancer because the plume was carried that way. So these sanctuary locations are also sanctuaries from all the reactors that will break and discharge radiation into both the sea and the air, plumes underwater, plumes in the air. So what we're trying to do now is look at the most dangerous areas on the planet and trying to put together some matrix to determine what people should do. And I'll pass that out. That'll be ready, but I'm going to do 2 terminal speaking events in Orlando and Reno in the fall. These are closed doors, and I'll tell you why in a minute, but I'll pass out those maps at those events. I have to do the events because there's so many things I cannot say in the public, in particularly in media like this, that are very sensitive, not just politically incorrect, extremely sensitive, extremely important things that people need to hear about their government, about economic survival as well as regular survival. I can't do it on the air, George, so I've got to do it behind closed doors, and then people must sign a non-disclosure agreement if they come to those 2 speaking events.
How come? Why?
Because I'm walking the edge. I'm walking the edge. Remember,
you're laying it out this time.
I'm sorry?
You're going to lay it all out this time.
Yeah, I did that once earlier this year, and I got to do it. I'm going to do it 2 more times. And also, by that time, things will have changed so much globally that we'll have new information to put out on the streets. But again, a lot of this is quasi-classified. It's very sensitive, and I'll get you and me in trouble by talking just about a little bit.
Would it cause a panic?
Part of it probably would, George. Yeah, probably would. That's why I sit down behind closed doors with folks and systematically go over the stuff that they need to know, that some of them suspect, conspiracy theories otherwise, but are important for them and their families. And my family. Even Dr. Doom is beginning to get scared now.
Even Dr. Doom is starting to mellow a little bit, huh?
Yeah, and getting scared. And when Dr. Doom gets scared, that should be a red flag to a lot of folks.
A lot of people, Ed, and I think it may have led up to these Boston bombings, but a lot of people have been feeling uneasy, very tense. Do you feel that with remote viewing? Can you feel emotion at all with that?
Well, when we go through our protocols, as you might know, it takes about 10 minutes to get to the stage where we have to be able to discern our own emotions vis-a-vis our target. If our target's an inanimate object, we don't have any emotions that we have to objectify. But if it's something like a bomb blast or whatever, then we have to be able to not only discharge our own what we call aesthetic impact. We have to be able to discharge that, but we have to be able to recognize it distinctively and succinctly and get it down on paper and move on, because it's part of the description of the target. And yes, we do have reactions. When I look for missing children who are mostly dead, I have to break away sometimes because I cry. I come back in 5 minutes and work, but it's a heavy duty thing. When we looked at, as a military unit, when I was operations officer for the military remote viewing unit, the Lockerbie bombing.
Sure.
We're looking in the aircraft for a whole bunch of people being blown up at once, and that's heavy impact stuff. So yeah, but you have to deal with it, and we do.
Ed, we're going to get into some various aspects of your remote viewing abilities and see what else you see here. But the Hopis called it the Blue Star. Revelation calls it Wormwood. Are we talking about
Casino?
Yeah. Are we talking about the same thing here?
I think so. That's my surmise. Yeah. When you see the Blue Star Casino dancing in the plaza, or a dancer takes his mask off, then it begins.
Is there any way around it? I mean, can we control it? Do we change? We have the ability to change anything?
No, we don't. I think in advanced worlds, probably in other parts unknown. I think if people are coherent, and consciousness is very, very powerful, and I think that en masse, then I believe it could be controlled, but certainly not here, where we're the collective consciousness itself, not to mention collective unconscious, is chaos. And so we don't have the coherence to be able. Yes, mind over matter is possible. Psychokinesis is possible, and en masse, mountains can be moved, but not down here. No, sir.
No, not at all.
There's one thing that's very, very important that I want to make sure that I get across to your listeners about this H7N9 virus, this pandemic, and it may mutate too, but it doesn't matter because there's a home remedy that works, George, and it can save lives. So may I talk about that?
Yeah, let's do that when we come right back after the break, Ed, okay?
Okay.
Major Ed Dames, our special guest here on Coast to Coast AM. Next hour, we'll take phone calls with Ed. His website, learnrv.com. Also, great DVD out there, by the way, if you're interested in learning about remote viewing. It's called Learn Remote Viewing, the DVD set. Simple as that. In terms of contact, if you need to contact me, that's George at coasttocoastam.com. coasttocoastam.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter as well by simply going to our website. I'm going to come back in a moment. We'll continue talking with Major Ed Dames, the remote viewer. Let's get into this H7N9 pandemic. Was it developed in a lab? Let's see what Ed has to say when we come right back. Well, next hour, we'll take your calls with Major Ed Dames. We'll come back with him in a moment, talk more about remote viewing, what he sees. Have you had a chance to see our television program, Beyond Belief? You can. You get it for 10 days free. Simply go to our website, coasttocoastam.com, At the top, you click Hosts, and then TV opens up, and click that. Fill out the information. Also take advantage and look at all the specialized videos that you can also look there for free. 10 days free. Just have some fun with it. And welcome back to Coast. Major Ed Dames with us. Ed, so there is this flu out there called the bird flu, H7N9. It's pretty deadly. I mean, it's got a 20% death rate out there in China.
And even scary, it's an influenza A type of virus. And even scarier is the medical community does not know how it's being transmitted. In fact, there was one case of a typhoid Mary, where a woman, a virtual typhoid Mary, where a woman was later diagnosed with the virus, but had none of the symptoms, and transited and went to other municipalities and spread it. So it's very dangerous. So evidently, it's not only a human-to-human transmission, but there's another vector, and scientists don't know where that is yet. But I want to warn people, and it's going to come our way, I'm sure. This is the pandemic that we're looking at that's concurrent with the global economic collapse that we've been seeing for so long. Okay, I haven't been to a doctor in 22 years. Okay, I take care of myself. I've had some very serious things, but I've taken care of them, short of broken bones. I had full-blown pneumonia a number of years ago, and I mean full-blown pneumonia. Mm-hmm. But I used remote viewing to take a look at this while I could still sit and move my hands. And come to find out that I was looking at something that other people already knew about. That's the beauty of the Internet, wonderful tool. This is what you do, and since this is a killer, this virus is a killer, this cure that I'm going to talk to you about, it can kill virtually any respiratory disease, any respiratory virus. It kills it. It drops it in its tracks after about 6 days of use. And it may save your life or the lives of your loved ones, too. It's oregano oil. You take a 1-gallon jug of water, anything you buy in the store or whatever, a plastic bottle of water. Put 20 drops of oil of oregano in that water. Cap the bottle, shake it. Don't try to drink this stuff with the oil on the top. It's nasty enough already.
Right.
Shake that, and every time you drink water over the next several days, drink only that water, only that. It kills everything is gone. There's no side effects, and it kills everything that's in your respiratory tract. It's a wonder drug.
Interesting. Okay, now this pandemic possibility, was it concocted in a laboratory, or this is natural?
It's natural. It's natural. Remember, this idea of consciousness, it extends in a single mind, this field that Rupert Sheldrake talks about, this morphogenetic field. It's sort of an extension of consciousness. These microbes, they collaborate together because they want food. And in our case, it's birds and us. And in the influenza A case, it's humans and animals, other animals and birds. And there's a collaboration that we've detected using our methodology, consciousness tools, that between these microbes, they actually collaborate in some way. And Rupert Sheldrake would understand this, I'm sure. In other words, there's an intelligence of a type that we're not familiar with.
No, not at all. Well, there's not much we can do other than try to build up our immunity then.
Build up your immunity, and in worst case, you have some of that oil of oregano around because it knocked my pneumonia out in 6 days flat. No side effects, no lasting.
And you're right about the shaking up. You got to do that.
Yeah, I have to do it because you don't want to drink that with the oil floats on top of the water. You don't want it's nasty tasting enough. You don't want to hit it full bore.
Ed, you had mentioned that you're still looking for missing children and people. How widespread is that? I mean, children and people who simply just vanish.
It's an epidemic. It's an epidemic. It's the way I look at it. But I just do it for personal reasons, for my soul, because I don't view my life as just years down here. And I think that I get some brownie points at my next duty station, sort of that kind of thing. But it's epidemic. It's epidemic. In fact, My case, the one I'm going on the road on Friday, is Patrick Carnes. Was a former truck driver. There's a big billboard on Route 80 in Nevada about this guy, a missing person. And I'd like to bring closure to that case. I can't talk much more about it, but I'd like to do that on Friday or Saturday.
Anything new to the Natalie Holloway case? After you pinpointed where she might have been, but nobody ever went to look.
No, sir. We that's way too old, and she's gone. So I told you I had a man on the ground, underwater,
right.
Actually, on that case. No, we're not doing any more work on that case. We have several others that are very sensitive. In fact, we have one child that's alive, and there are many of them that sold into sex slavery and those kind of things. And you do your best. Sort of like the story about the man walking down Cape Cod after a storm and seeing this boy throwing sand dollars back into the sea that had been blown and tossed ashore by the waves. There were millions all over the beach, and he told the boy, son, it's not going to do any good. And the boy tosses one into the sea and says, it will for that one.
That's very important.
That's how I feel about this.
Very important. Ed, there's a comet that's heading toward Mars. Take the time, if you can, one day to do a little remote viewing there and see if it's going to hit it or not.
Okay, I'll try to do that. Look at that. But we're very much focused on this Ison committee, this Ison Society's discovery. It's very, very scary.
I hear Hollywood's jumping aboard the kill shot too. What's going on there?
Yes, actually, I'm going to co-produce Smokewood Entertainment, the one that produced the movie Precious. They're actually going to do a kill shot movie, and partially based upon my life and work, and screenplays being written now.
How far out do you remote view in terms of time? Years?
Well, we don't do it that way. We don't look. Generally speaking, that's still in the research stage. In fact, it's being researched right now at calendrical dates. But what we look at is next events of a certain type of pandemics or whatever, pandemics, catastrophes, cataclysms. We look at events there that would where we could save people's lives. And so when we find an event, then we try to bracket it in time. I personally have no interest any longer. My team members do in looking past 2014. To be honest with you, I'll go into semi-retirement if I'm still alive after that. But of course, all the professionals that I've trained, they're like me. They're looking ahead. We should probably put some of them on your show one day because they're my protégés.
Yeah, how long have they been with you now?
Oh, years and years, and they're my protégés, and I'm very proud of them. I'm very proud of it, and they've taken remote viewing and gone off in their own specialized areas, just like I did with the location problems.
Mm-hmm.
And you should talk to some of them. They're young, they're dynamic, very well trained, very, very cautious in their work.
Ed Dames of the future. That's who they are, I guess.
Well, no, they're their own people. They're their own people.
What were they like when they came to you? Did they have any abilities?
No. They were just like me. Some of them a little bit, but it doesn't matter. The skill can be trained by anyone. It's just how much you want to commit, how much time and energy you want to commit to it. But they were like me. They were a little bit anticipative and a little scared, but I took care of that.
We lost the father of remote viewing, Ed, as you know.
We did.
Ingo Swann.
Yeah, we did.
Can't go on forever.
No. Everything has a beginning and an end. Empires, lives, you name it, countries, it has a beginning and an end.
Do you have any comment on this Boston bombing situation through the eyes of a remote viewer?
Well, the way we would look, what we would do in a case like that is we would ignore all of. I don't watch TV. I haven't watched TV since I was 16. That was a long time ago. But I'm quite familiar. I'm on the internet quite a bit in my work. I'm quite familiar with what the media has put out there. But as you know, in our work, we it's just a fax, ma'am. So the way I would handle that if that were my project and I had to assign my team to look into it, I would first want a photo of the explosions, and we've got that. So I would take one of the explosions and start from there. We would take that particular event and backtrack it and recreate all the events behind it, its natural history and all that kind of thing. We would look at just the explosion just prior to the device itself, who or what was carrying the device or where was the device fabricated and by whom, and those kinds of things. And then we would look at the other explosion, put those pieces together as well. Then we would look at the personalities involved, were there support teams behind the scenes, were there, and those kinds of things.
Well,
so it's a very systematic approach.
Would you be able to pinpoint people, individuals, much like they did on the videotape?
The way it would occur in our work is once we establish a person connected with the device. Let's say a person detonated the device with a cell phone or a radio. Then we would focus on that person, and the way we would identify the person would be to look at his or her primary residence, their primary workplace if they have one, and those kinds of things, and then put the pieces together that way. We'd have to actually look at the residence, at the street number, house numbers or apartment numbers, and then find out who lived there, because we can't easily pull names out of the matrix. It's difficult for us to do, so we'd have to do it that way.
What about Iran? What's the latest there at through a remote viewer?
Well, we haven't been focusing a lot on Iran because of the Korean situation, and we're capacity constrained. I only have so many resources, and so I've got to pick and choose carefully, and our focus has not been on Iran. That situation we can't affect anyway, because no matter what we would say or do vis-a-vis Iran, just like what happened to me when I briefed Vice President of the United States, Dan Quayle, at the time, on whether or not there were weapons of mass destruction in Kuwait City, the Allies went in anyway, saying that there were. So we feel that we would be ineffective no matter how much intelligence we provided to my country vis-a-vis Iran. That whatever is going to happen is going to happen anyway.
Tell me how important remote viewing is to an individual in their day-to-day life.
Well, my day-to-day life, where it is my life, it's pretty important. But for others, in order to, as I said, in order to look up ahead at your own life to see if there are dangers or threats, for instance, should I go to Boston today or not, that kind of thing, or to look at cures for health problems. That's very, very common in my work. Individuals who are trained in remote viewing, who learn this via my DVD sets or in person, they use it for health reasons. They use it for investment as well, too. I'd say about a good 60-70% of my students are interested in investments, whereas the optimum investment at the time. There can be some real surprises there, too, because it's direct knowledge. Your unconscious goes right into this global mind, and it pops down with the answer when you go through these protocols.
Some people ever use it for personal gain in terms of stock markets and lottery numbers and things like that?
Yeah, of course, I do. I'm going out on the road again next week to look at concentrations of silver and gold ore, heavy concentrations of silver and gold ore, and I used them. I looked at my optimum investment, and that's what it turned out to be. I was wondering why it wouldn't be coins or treasures or something else like that, but then I did that research and I realized why my unconscious said, no. Don't do coins, because coins can be counterfeited and they have aesthetic value, and some of them are tungsten loaded or whatever. Don't do treasures, because treasures are, for instance, a stagecoach robbery. Black Bart takes a strong box and sticks it somewhere. Well, most places today are private property, and Wells Fargo would still own the strong box, so you can't do that. And for any other treasure or antiquity, if in the United States, this is different than Britain. Britain has a very nice system. In the United States, if you're on public land and you stumble across a treasure, gold or silver or Spanish, the conquistadors' silver or something like that, it's a felony. It's a felony if you remove it. Anything that's older than 6 months that's of historic value on public land, if you touch it, it's a felony.
It's not finders keepers, huh?
No. It's different in England. England has a very, very equitable system. But that's why my unconscious knew all that. It's the master problem solver. Set and said, go here. Here's the silver concentration. Here's the gold concentration. Use this. So I used it as that was my optimum investment. I don't want to be an economic slave.
Well, hey, if it works for you, it's a great tool, isn't it?
It's one of the most powerful tools I know. I'm still in awe of this. I've been in this business more than 30 years. I'm still in awe of what it can do in terms of understanding the universe, understanding our own unconscious, and in terms of personal happiness.
And isn't it true that you have to basically, in remote viewing, take the first thought? Because if you keep thinking about it, you're going to generally pick up the wrong things?
Well, there's no thinking allowed during the thinking comes in terms of setting up the problem, the search term, the matrix search term. Then that's a very elaborate process. It's just like an internet search term. It has to be right, or you get junk in, junk out. And then the thinking comes again in the third part of the process, which is an analysis. We have to analyze our work, and that requires thinking. But during the process itself, there is no thinking allowed. It's like playing a piano and reading sheet music. The data is coming in using the protocols that we use. And it's just very strict. You have a pen and paper, and the protocols are taught. And you're recreating, just like recreating pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. You're pulling the pieces out of the matrix, out of the collective consciousness. You're pulling that out and putting them together again in the form of paper, word, descriptors, and sketches. But when you do that, you're taught not to think, which can be very frustrating for a new student.
The solar flares from the sun, not the kill shot, but the solar flares, how much of a problem can they be?
They do not affect us, and some people say that a sidereal time it is the best time in remote view is this, that, and the other thing. In fact, if my pros ever use excuses like that, they're fired. And they're out the door. There's no excuses. If you've got a remote view, you do it whatever time of the day, whether the solar flares are active or not, and it has not seemed to affect us at all.
Not in the least, huh?
Well, I don't know about not in the least, because I haven't worked with EEG's equipment on my head and correlated solar activity with remote viewing times, and that would take many months, perhaps years, to establish correlation. So I'm not in a position to know, George.
Do you remote viewers have precognitive dreams?
No more or less than other people. However, for people who have come to my workshops in the past and who I've trained and myself, if you're not a dreamer, if you do not dream at night, no REM dreaming and all this. The first day of remote viewing training is the last day that will ever happen. You'll start dreaming. Learning this opens doors and portals to what we call the matrix, the global mind.
And it's critical to dream that way, isn't it?
No, it's not. You can still be a super remote viewer and not dream, but it does for people who do not dream previously without training. They start very quickly.
And you must have a pad and pen when you remote view?
Yes, because you have to record what's coming in. Otherwise, because to remember something requires thinking, and you're not allowed to think. So you have to be able to record what is coming into your conscious awareness at the moment, and then move on. The music cannot stop. You've got to keep moving. So if you didn't have a pen and paper and you were just remote viewing a topic, then by the time 45 minutes was over, you'd only have a few pieces of the puzzle, because it requires thinking to remember, and we are not allowed to think.
Ed, we're coming back to take phone calls with you in the final hour here on Coast to Coast AM. Okay, here's our final hour. Give you an opportunity to talk with Major Ed Dames about remote viewing right here on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back. Ed, if you saw something tragic in a remote viewing for a person, would you share that with them, or would you not tell them?
Oh, it's a very difficult ethical question, George. I would probably beat around the bush and until they asked me exactly what I'm talking about. That's probably the way I would, and I've had to do that before.
Now, the old Ed Dames would probably tell them right away, wouldn't you?
I'll say again, please.
Wouldn't the older Ed Dames have said that right away?
Probably. Yeah, probably.
You changed.
But I'm a kinder and gentler Dr. Doom now.
You have mellowed somewhat, haven't you? You have. Let's take some calls here. They're lining up for you. But as you look at all of this, what do you see as the most immediate pressing issues? This comet or North Korea?
The economy.
Really?
Yes, the economy. Because there's no way to save the economy. I said global economic collapse. I meant it. And when it goes, it's going to go fast. The house of cards, this Ponzi scheme is over.
Are we going to see any signs, or are we seeing them now?
Oh yes, but that would require many more many more hours to discuss. But any reasonable person can do their own research if they choose to, and see that it's about to fall apart.
So, what would you do with your own money? What would you do?
Well, that's why the gold and silver ore are important to me, because I can take that to a refiner, and they will pay me in whatever currency is around at the time, because you're going to have some type of lingua franca, something to buy gas with, something to buy food with, too. So let's say the dollar collapses overnight and there's a new currency, just hypothetically. The dollar's not going to collapse overnight. But you're still going to need to be able to engage in commerce. So there'll be something out there that would be used, a coin or fiat currency, another fiat currency. But the ones that are in use right now are so. I don't want to go into the details. All I'm saying is that the economic situation is terrible. A year ago on your show, I said we're looking at 20% unemployment just this year alone.
Yeah, and
that's going to be up to 40% sooner than we think.
Well, that's deadly if that happens, and that also causes riots.
Yes, we're looking at martial law. I've said that many times on Coast to Coast. There's going to be a martial law. Obama is the last president that we're seeing, period. Things change.
What do you mean the last president? What happens
There's not going to be another presidential election as far as we're seeing. Obama is the last president.
So you're saying we will not have a 2016 election?
Correct.
Well, who's going to govern? Who's going to lead?
Chaos.
Are we going back to
I don't know what. I have not looked past 2014, and there's just too much happening, confluence of events, and it's just too chaotic for me to put it. I have no time to put to look that way and try to put things together.
Are you talking Mad Max?
Oh yes, in many parts of the world, and in the U.S. We've been pretty spoiled for a long time in a lot of different ways, but that's going to end very quickly.
All right.
When the power goes out and the food's not on the shelves, yes.
All right, we go to the calls now. We're going to go to Tokyo right now on our Skype line. Kota's with us. Hello there. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, it's actually 5:15 on Wednesday afternoon here in Tokyo.
That's right. My watch isn't working, but that's okay.
Yes.
Go ahead.
But it's a perfect timing for me to listen into Coast to Coast during work or after work. I've got a question, George and Major. The tension over here in the Pacific region is just way too tense, and especially involving over this Northern Korean situation. I thought all of us, China, South Korea, would get along to somehow solve this problem, but none of us are getting along with each other, and especially with this madman. None of us can detect what's he going to do next. And Major, my question is this, especially with this Fukushima incident, which is not ending at all, and we've had over 123 earthquakes already this year, opposed to 98 in all of 2012. What is our future as selfish as I may ask about the Japanese and Japan?
Just northern Japan, you have no future. It's over. Fukushima took care of that. The next generation of children will watch what happens. It's the worst man-made disaster in recorded history, and people would say, well, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, those were one-time events. They destroyed a lot of people and things, and they were over. The radiation dissipated. Fukushima is the gift that keeps on giving, and it's going to start destroying. It has already started destroying the northern part of that country, and that's a whole lot more serious than any of the live fire events that may or may not occur in the near future. And don't worry about North Korea.
And it's not giving in a good way at all. As a matter of fact, there's a story about beached sea lions on the West Coast here, and they think maybe it's because of the radiation that they might have gotten in the water.
Yes, of course, and the media is not reporting that either, because there's no way they can do it. Even the best that it can say is, as you've seen on the news today, it may take 40 years to deal with the Fukushima reactors, and I say that they're not going to deal. They cannot deal with it. It's a problem that cannot be solved. Chernobyl was concreted over, okay, and now there's more repairs to it. Fukushima, no, it will destroy that country. And even now, many wealthy people already left Tokyo. The Japanese government is buying land in Burma, Myanmar, to be able to build alternative cities for people to live, because they know what's going to happen. They know perfectly well what is going on, what that radiation damage is going to do to not only children but adults.
Are we going to have other Fukushimas, Ed?
Yes. Uh-huh. Especially when we've got. Yes, we're going to have other accidents too. That's why this sanctuary work that I've done for clients allows me to see where these zones are that are safer from these kinds of terrible tragedies in the very near future. But Fukushima it's a disaster beyond belief.
Let's go to Mission Hills, California. Tony's turn on Coast to Coast. Tony, go ahead. You're on with Ed Dames.
Hey, good to be with you guys tonight.
Thanks, Tone.
Hey, Dames on. You know what? Right off the bat, I gotta say, I like that you don't sugarcoat anything. You say it like it is.
That's him.
Well, when you, as a military officer, intelligence officer, my commanders did not like me. They hated me. They just, Dames, you're sick. How's the first war going to start? Well, this is what's going to happen. Spetsnaz officer, Spetsnaz agent, Soviet Special Forces agent is going to lob a VR-55 grenade over the fence at our children when our children are on lunch break at school. VR-55 is nerve gas, blah, blah, blah. And I would go on like this. They said, Dames, you're sick. I said, this is the way our enemy thinks, sir. This is what they're going to do, because it will be militarily and decisively effective. And they don't like to hear that.
Yeah, well, I'm the very few that like to hear things straight up the way they are, you know? I had a quick question for you. I wanted to go to one of your speakings. I was wondering if you could buy tickets for that, or how would I be able to attend?
I'm going to speak. My terminal speaking events, I assume, are going to be this fall in Orlando on the East Coast and Reno on the West Coast. And if you go to
Orlando in September, I think, right?
Yeah, I think it's September. If you and October in Reno, October 5th, I believe, and September 14th. If you go to thekillshot.com, all that information is there. People can also call a 24-hour number if they want to. Easy to do it on the web, but truckers can't do that. So we have a phone number for truckers.
And you have had people remote view in roughly how quickly?
Well, through the DVD set, the Learn RV DVD set. If they go to learnrv.com directly, they can look at that set. That's a 4 DVD set, and they can learn how to remote view in about 4 months of practice. They can start being quite well. If they go into my forums where I teach on the web, I'm semi-retired from teaching workshops, but I still teach on the web for free, the higher-level skills, and my professionals do this too. If they go there, they can really bootstrap their skills, because they can post their work, and then we evaluate it. We do all that for free, because this is our job.
Joe in Bloomington, Illinois, Indiana. Welcome to the program, first-time caller. Hi, Joe.
Hey, good morning, guys. Thanks for taking my call, George.
Sure thing.
Major Dames, I know you mentioned earlier missing person is kind of an epidemic right now. I'm probably taking a shot in the dark by asking this, but I don't know if you were familiar with the name Lauren Spearer, Spierer. She was an Indiana University college student that went missing back in, I believe, June of 2011. It made national news for a brief time. I don't know if you've ever run across that name or had any information on her.
No, I don't. And I'd say a good 90% of my work is almost solely missing exploited children, because children are innocent. They're not old enough to make decisions for themselves too. They're perfectly innocent, and the monsters that rape and kill them, those kinds of heinous crimes. Those are the ones that I go after.
And what do they do? They abduct these kids and they ship them out somewhere? What do they do? How do they get them out of here?
Well, the ones in Eastern Europe are shipped out en masse. They're picked up, and you can study that. And it's mass transit in terms of sexual exploitation of children in Europe, especially Eastern Europe. But in our country, it's different in Japan and Canada, so somewhat. But in the United States, mostly what you've got is 12 to 14-year-old girls raped and murdered within 4 hours, and then dumped on somewhere where their bodies can't be found. That's the epidemic that I'm talking about.
Is government cracking down on this?
No, the FBI can't. They don't have the time. These kids fall off the radar screen in 2 weeks. I mean, the only ones that remember them are their families.
Are these kids who normally leave home?
No, sir. No. In fact, those cases, I don't work, and I don't work family abductions either. Only missing, exploited, Amber Alert. I'm sorry. Only missing, exploited cases where a child's life is in danger, and usually by the time that I get around to being in the field with them, they're gone.
Let's go to Kevin in Boston, Mass. Hey, Kevin, go ahead, sir.
Yes. Good morning, gentlemen. How are you doing?
Good, Kev.
Something weird happened with me the other day. I mean, I've been a caller. I've been on the show a few times. This has been going on throughout my life. I've told you this once, but when the Boston bombing happened, when they were looking for this guy, I'm a truck driver, and I forgot, Indiana or Illinois at the time, and I kept on trying to focus on this guy, like, where is this guy? Where is this guy? And all of a sudden, like you said, like, you stop thinking, just let yourself go. And I kept seeing water. At first it didn't make any sense to me. I'm like, maybe he's in the river hiding or in the pool. But then he turned out to be in the boat, which
that's the way.
Sense at the time.
Yeah, what happens is when you focus on any idea, everything exists as patterns of information in this collective unconscious, in this global mind, it's universal mind, and so the idea of this person is a pattern. And then if you focus on that, it pulls in what's connected with it are all the other patterns that are immediately at that time that you're thinking, focused on that person, that event. All the ideas that are attendant, that surround him, is connected with him. And so since he's in a boat, what pops in, that idea is present in your unconscious. Your unconscious knows he's in a boat, too. But when you look for a label in terms of left brain, right brain thinking, when you go into your memory, the idea that pops out is water, and the water is associated with the boat. So that's the way this stuff works. And we train viewers to make sure that we're far more precise in understanding how that process works.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. It makes sense what you're saying.
Well, you were essentially remote viewing. You focus on the target and you start downloading information. Now, what happens though is your imagination overlays. We have words for this in our business in vernacular. Your imagination grabs that and you start thinking about the idea that just popped in the conscious awareness, and that's what we train. When you're trained in remote viewing, you learn how to stop that from happening.
Okay, let's go next. We'll grab one more call before the break. We've got Jacob in San Jose, California. Jacob, go ahead.
George and Ed, there's a Fox News commentator, Michelle Malkin. She had a campaign trying to find her cousin, a University of Seattle freshman that disappeared. She walked out of a Safeway one bright day and never was seen again. What can remote viewing do for missing adults? Is there any hope that remote viewing can give to those kinds of situations?
Yes, sir. A family member or a friend or an associate can go into the learnrv.com forums my teaching forums, and in those forums, my professionals will occasionally take on cases like that and turn it into a project. I only handle, as I mentioned, the missing endangered children.
Ed, you pinpointed, of course, Stephen Fawcett when he went down in the Sierra Nevada mountains. People doubted that, but you had that very close. Do you remember that?
Oh, I do, but it wasn't a pinpoint. It was just a general location, but was far different than all the millions of dollars that went into the search. But right now, we can pinpoint. Pinpointing is done now. In fact, that's how I can find gold and silver in kids. And so, unfortunately, my last case, I don't want to mention any names, the child was in the landfill, and had been there for about a year. So I closed that case.
It's got to be a sad, sad job sometimes, Ed.
Yes, sir, it is. It is. But, nobody can. Somebody's got to do it. And the FBI they have some great folks in the bureau, but they're so busy with counter narcotics and counterterrorism stuff. There's no time left for these kids. So I had all these specialized skills as ops and training officer of the super unit, and I wanted to do something with it, and I made a choice.
Let's go to Ian at Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Hello, Ian. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, George.
You're welcome.
Basically, my question is, I definitely understand the intenseness that he's talking about with all these possible catastrophes happening and all this. What I'm wondering is that, if someone could give advice to, say a catastrophe does happen, you have a lot of water and you have a decent amount of food, is there anywhere you can sense in your remote viewing that would be safe to go, at least for a little bit, till maybe things got better, like anywhere safe, like North America?
Yes, that's what all these clients that I've had in the past, hundreds, that personal sanctuaries where I go into their own unconscious in conjunction with the matrix, the universal mind, and pull out all of these, all the factors that are the weather condition, what places do they like, what geographies, and husbands and wives are usually different by hundreds of miles, but administrative factors. For instance, if I pinpoint a place that's safe for this individual, it's got to also be a place where their friends and relatives can make it. Because what good is it to survive all this stuff if your loved ones are dead? Who wants to live under those conditions too? So unconscious takes all those things into consideration. It's the master problem solver. Yeah, that's what remote viewing does. And since unconscious is your best friend, and it is. It's something that tells you, don't go to Boston tomorrow, don't get on that plane or whatever. Its key purpose is to keep you alive. It is your best friend. So when you lean on it and you do it in a very structured way, this discovery of remote viewing is very structured, now you really got something going for you.
All right, we're going to be back with final questions with Ed Dames on Coast to Coast AM. On our next Coast to Coast program, first hour, Joshua P. Warren joins us with some more ghostly stories. And then, of course, our very special guest, Richard Belzer, joins us as we talk about his work, Dead Wrong, the facts about controversial cover-ups. Fantastic work. And Richard, of course, is also on Law & Order. He plays the part of John Munch. So we'll be back in a moment on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back with Ed Dames. Ed, do you still play around with remote viewing? I mean, do you try to look at the far side of the moon and things like that?
I don't. I have. I'm very interested in contact, so I do monitor the agencies, outside agencies, extraterrestrial agencies that are monitoring us. I look at them and I watch them, so that's what I use it for. Very important to me.
Well, there's no question. Just over the years of talking to you, Paul Smith, Ingo Swan, Hal Putoff, that this is a very powerful tool that people can use in their everyday activities if they know how to use it and use it right. How many people have this normal remote viewing ability, and then they tune it up and they get even better?
Well, you're talking about psychics, and I'd say probably 85% of the population is psychic to some degree, but 15% to the other 15% to a very great degree. And as I've said many times, I can take a psychic, just like a basketball scout can watch a kid run in rings around his fellows, his peers, in a school lot and say, aha, I could make that kid not only into a professional, like I can make any remote viewer into a professional, I can make them into an all-star if they toe the line. So you've got, it's just like art, it's a skill. So you have to learn this, like art or music or anything else like that. It is a skill. And you may have the potential as a psychic, but that potential is not realized if you don't go to boot camp and learn it.
Well, that's a good point. Okay, let's go back to the phones. Linda in Charleston, South Carolina. Hey, Linda, good morning.
Well, good morning, George, and good morning, Major.
Good morning.
And I'd like to thank you both for your service. I was a young girl traveling all alone, and so often the people in uniform protected me and normalized for me what was going on with wars and the service. And I cannot tell you how patriotic and how much I appreciate you all. Not just you two, but all of our veterans and service people that are active.
You're very welcome.
But I was calling, Major, to ask you, I wanted to ask you two questions, but perchance I only can ask the one. I heard on one of the programs with Coast to Coast that there is a special preparation when you're doing a remote viewing, such as sage or something to keep evil spirits out. Have I totally missed the mark on that?
Yes, you've totally missed the mark. There's no such thing. It's just like any other skill. If you were to say the same thing about playing the piano or learning how to solve a math equation, it would sound just as silly.
Well, that's wonderful to know. May I say, George, I apologize for your horrendous experience with the microwave, but
yeah.
did such a service at coming out and talking to your listeners. At the time you went through that excruciating dilemma, there was a commercial running where a young girl comes home, throws her pizza rolls in the microwave, and she gets on the phone, then pops them in her mouth the second she opens the microwave, and they pulled that commercial. And so I believe, and I have nothing to base it on except my remote viewing, but that your experience got through to people, and it saved so many young kids.
You might be right. And all we have to do is save one, and everything was worth it. That was a nightmare, Ed. I'll tell you about it one day when we're together.
Roger.
Ed, in terms of folks who want to go to your events and your conferences, learnrv.com, of course, you still have that as a website. What's the other one you have?
The best one, the all-encompassing one, is thekillshot.com. And for truckers, because truckers it's hard for them to write down to. If there's a phone number that they can use, a toll-free number, 866-607-8439, or you could 866-607-VIEW, VIEW.
Are you in the world of social networking now?
No, I never will be. I just have no time. The only time I social network is after hours at my workshops and live events, and then I do it in style.
All right. Let's go to Jeff in North Carolina. Welcome to the program. Hey, Jeffrey, thanks for calling.
Hey, George and Major. Yeah, I was just listening to your program, and I was listening to Ed, and I have like a question about recently, I want to say recently, probably about over the past couple of months or so, I've just been getting this feeling of I don't know, my conscience or whatever is wanting me to I guess starting to prepare for stuff, prepare for, I don't know, something's going to happen or something. I've been reading a lot of books on survivalism, first aid, stuff like that. And
when
that was the reason I was calling, because
your unconscious will try, whether it's something that's wrong with your body and in your dreams, that tries to get through that. But Chet Snow long ago wrote a book called Mass Dreams of the Future, and the idea there is that when things globally or very, very big events are about to happen, as I said, unconscious is an individual's best friend. You'll start to get hints of that. and whether it's in dreams or waking consciousness, you'll start to get hints of it, and you will feel antsy. And by God, what's coming over the horizon now on all fronts, economically, militarily, in terms of pandemics, and most of all in terms of El Sol. Yeah, I can certainly understand that. Like I said, even Dr. Doom is starting to get scared, and that's a bad sign.
All right, thanks for that call. West we go. Tyson in Grantsville, Utah. You're on with Major Ed Dames. Go ahead, Tyson.
Hey, George, thanks for having me.
Hi.
Major, I wanted to share a quick experience with you and then ask what you would classify it under, whether it be remote viewing or something else.
Shoot.
But about 10 years ago when I was 18 in high school, I had a teacher, one of my choir teachers, and she was pregnant. And I've always had the ability to see things that are going to happen in the future. And this one was really distinct. I have a very visual mind. And I saw that she was having a miscarriage. And so I felt like I needed to ask her in class what she would do if she prepared mentally or emotionally at all in case she happens to have a miscarriage. And she said, well, I don't want to think about that. And I was like, no, I'm serious. Like, what are you going to do to prepare for that? And I told her that it's going to end up happening. And when she went home that night, she actually had a miscarriage. And she wasn't at school the next day. And I knew why. And then a few days later, the principal of my school, because she had told the principal that what I had shared with her, and she asked me, she said, hey, Tyson, I heard that you told your teacher that she was going to have a miscarriage. And I was like, yeah, I did. And she's like, and it actually happened that night. She's like, that's pretty, I don't remember exactly, but basically, like impressive or, so I've had a lot of different experiences like that in my life, but that's one of the most vivid, and that's one that I saw detailed the most in my mind, and I felt impressed to talk to let her know so that she could prepare for it. And would you consider something like that as remote viewing, or would you classify it as something else?
I'd classify it as clairvoyance. And there's a number of people like you.
And there's a fine line there too, Ed, isn't there?
No. Remote viewing, remember, is a skill. We'll take a skill, a natural innate ability like Tyson's. We'll take that innate ability and we turn it into a skill. Just like everybody has a natural ability to speak a language, but unless you have a structure, you're not going to be able to speak except in garbled whistles and grunts. You have to have a structure. And then you take the innate ability to speak at 3 or 4 years old or 2, and you structure it. And now you can learn Spanish or English or whatever family you grew up in, or be a polyglot. So he's natural clairvoyant. We take that natural psychic ability, and me as a coach turn it into a skill.
Simple as that. Let's go east. Diane's in Hartford, Connecticut. Hello, Diane.
Hi, George
Howdy.
And Major Dames. It's an honor to speak to you. In fact, blessed be to both of you for your work.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it a lot, and I'm sure everybody listening does as well. A quick question, really. Other people like Doris Cannon and Edgar Cayce, they have created maps of safe places in the future. And I know what Major Dame said earlier this evening about he wasn't going to let everybody know where he thought safe places were going to be, but is his ideas along the lines of theirs?
Those maps that other people have done were related to pole ships. And I am not talking about a pole ship, although, believe it or not, we do perceive that idea in the future, and we don't know how long in the future, but it is coming. So, no, this is specific to solar influences, the impact of them, plus radiation plumes. That's these areas too. And what I'm going to give maps of out at those two speaking engagements are the zones, the impact zones that are the most dangerous that we know of.
Is there any place to hide, Ed? I mean, realistically, people are stuck in areas. You know, they can't leave their jobs.
Yeah. No. Many people are going to be faced with the Mad Max scenario. Many people are going to be faced with these kind of things, and of course I know that. There's old people living in cities and not going to be able to get out. Yeah, and no, it's not going to be a happy situation when the power goes out, and when unprecedented events happen in the sky, and when you're trapped in the city because the Department of Homeland Security or somebody else says you can't leave. You know what I mean?
And that could happen.
It will happen.
Let's take a few more calls. JG in Santa Barbara, California. Hey, JG.
Gentlemen, how you doing?
Good, Jay. Very good.
Good. The question I'm asking is, I've seen the training programs that you have, Major, and I've been looking at them, but kind of a two-part question. One part being, are there any skills that I need or you're looking for if you're going to, say, take somebody on as a trainee? And the second part would be, when you do this remote viewing, can you do it for yourself or just for other people? And I appreciate your answer.
Okay, yeah. I'm not. I have my own professional team. Matrix Intelligence Agency has assets, highly trained assets that, with many collectively hundreds of years of experience. So I'm not hiring, but yes, most of the people that learn remote viewing do indeed use it for themselves. For instance, to find lost items is a very, very common thing. You lost your wallet, you lost your dog, you ran away, or something else like that. You can go on to the forums at learnrv.com and look at examples of people who have posted their work saying, hey, I lost this or I lost that, and look, I found it because of this session, and they post the work. So you can see how it works in those sessions.
All right, Rob's Vancouver, British Columbia. Rob, you're up with the Major. Go ahead.
Hi, how you guys doing? Thanks for having me on.
Sure thing.
I got to say, at first, I'm glad there are parts in interior BC that are safe, because I've been planning to head that way for the last 2 years. And on a quick note, before I ask my question, if you can find concentration of gold and silver, Vancouver's a hub for junior mining companies in the world, and I'm sure there's a lot of people up here that would be willing to pay a pretty penny to get your service.
I have clients. I've actually had clients who became friends in BC, and one of them was actually hired me to look for platinum nuggets. There's a river in BC. It's the only one outside of Siberia that actually has platinum nuggets. And so I found the gold and platinum nuggets for that client.
Wow. The question is, Canada has a very strong banking system. It's a very focused resource economy. We have lots of oil, lumber, grain, etc. But we're so intertwined with the States. Have you ever looked at what the Canadian currency might do? And then, what might happen in Canada? Our population's so close to the U.S. border, although we have all these resources. I don't know if you've looked at anything along those lines.
No, I have not looked at things specifically along those lines, but there is a curious thing about U.S. citizen sanctuaries. There are many sanctuaries in Canada, but concentrated in Saskatchewan, Alberta, and to a certain degree Manitoba. However, they are desirable locations, but American citizens never end up there because administratively your unconscious knows that if something goes down, you'll be kicked out of Canada because you do not have a visa. You do not have permission to stay. So it's senseless to know about, for an American citizen, to know about these sanctuaries in Canada where the government's going to send you away when the stuff hits the fan.
Quick review. You're concerned about the kill shot. Are we talking about this year, Eddie?
I'm talking about when that comet, that Ison comet, that Ison group's discovered
Comet Ison, that's right,
passes through in the winter. At that time, start getting ready. Get ready. And I feel that if I'm not in place this year, especially by the spring of 2014, then I'm not going to be able to make it.
I'm going to hold your feet to the fire on this one.
Well, I expect you to do. You would, but that is the best that I can do, and that's what I'm doing for myself.
Sacramento, we go. Jerry, you got a minute? Go ahead.
Well, hi, George. This is Jerry, and you talked to me a couple months ago about multiple sclerosis, which I've had.
Oh, that's right. I remember you, Jerry. Go ahead. The clock's got us, Jerry. So a real quick question.
Okay, quick question. I've got a son that's 24. He's brilliant. He's at Sac State, about to graduate. However, I can't seem to convince him of reality. And I want to know that I used great intention before, and I've learned so much from you. That's how I got you last time on the first call, and this time on the second.
Well, that's good. Look, and let me answer this for you very quickly. You just keep telling him he's got to use intention, because that's the only way he's going to be able to turn his life around. Simple as that. Ed, always, my friend, stay in touch, would you?
I will. Thank you for having me on.
Major Ed Dames, who's talking about the kill shot coming up this time. For Dan Galante, Tom Danheiser, Lisa Lyon, Lex Lonehood, Sean Ladesseur, Timothy Banal, Stephanie Smith, Chris Boros, George Knapp, John B. Wells, Ian Punnett, and Art Bell. I'm George Norrie, somewhere out there on Coast to Coast AM. We'll see you on our next edition. Until then, be safe.